Good evening and welcome to Queer News Tonight. This is the world's first and only LGBTQ plus daily evening television news. We're broadcasting live and then available on demand. And we're available on all smart televisions, including Roku, Apple TV, Android TV, Amazon Fire Television, and of course, YouTube and Facebook. It's time to queer up the news. It's Monday, January 23rd, 2023. We are live and literally out of the closet and into the headlines. So many of your important stories we're going to tell this evening on Queer News Tonight.
This is the world's first live daily LGBTQ evening news show, literally out of the closet and into the headlines on Queer News Tonight with Al Ferguson.
I'm your anchor at Queer News Tonight, Al Ferguson, and this evening we bring you the news of and a perspective representing the LGBTQ plus community from South Florida, America, and across our planet.
This is the world's first and only unedited live LGBTQ plus evening news show. Whatever happens, unique in LGBTQ plus news, you will see it and hear it.
Happening Out Television Network is a 501c3 nonprofit media platform in the television and radio model of PBS and NPR, but we're designed for our LGBTQ plus community.
We are part of one of the largest LGBTQ plus media companies in America, Hotspots Magazine and Happening Out Television Network.
Our magazine is celebrating 38 years of the LGBTQ plus experience, and our television news, talk, and entertainment shows support our mission to educate the LGBTQ plus and broader community.
Well, let's begin by welcoming anchor Chef Josie. She is a Bravo TV top chef and the master of the popular champagne and oyster celebration restaurant, Bubbles and Pearls, on the heart of the famous Wilton Drive. She is also known by her alter ego, DJ Lady Snack Daddy. Welcome, Chef Josie.
Hello, everyone. So nice to be here. But let's go ahead and welcome my friend here, anchor Dr. Tai Houser. He is an associate professor of English and Humanities at Broward College. Additionally, he teaches for extended periods of time at international colleges in China, India, Spain, and Bolivia. Good evening, Doc.
Good evening. I'd be careful about calling me your friend, though, Josie. I agree, but it might be bad for your reputation.
It's okay.
Let's welcome anchor Orlando Gonzales. He's the executive director for SAVE, recognized as South Florida's longest-serving organization dedicated to protecting people who are LGBTQ+ against discrimination. He also serves on the board of trustees for the Point Foundation. Good evening, Orlando.
Thank you for that. Let's welcome anchor Gregg Shapiro, an inductee into the Chicago LGBT Hall of Fame. Gregg is the author of 8 books, including his latest, Fear of Muses, an entertainment journalist whose celebrity interviews and music reviews run in a variety of regional LGBTQ+ and mainstream publications and websites. His movie review column called Screensaver can be found in South Florida Gay News, San Francisco's Bay Area Reporter, RottenTomatoes.com, and more. Good evening, Gregg.
And a very good evening to everyone. We are the reporters for Queer News Tonight, and this evening we begin with the queer headlines. The LGBTQ plus community in South Florida and across America is diverse. Our community across the world is vast. And here are the bullet points of the Queer News for today, Monday, January 23rd, 2023. And I want to say Happy National Pie Day, as in banana cream, not 3.14159.
Missed it. Mincemeat. All right. First, we queer up the USA View. LGBTQ plus community mourns the AAPI community mass shooting. This is a commentary. I did not know if I was going to say a word about the mass shooting in a predominantly Asian American Pacific Islander community in Los Angeles. There is going to be no statement from Queer News Tonight like the gun lobby and conservative politicians, hollow and insincere, "You are in our thoughts and prayers." That doesn't lead to any change. I remind you, mass shooting events have doubled in America since 2018. For the first 21 days of January of 2023, we have already had 33 mass shootings, defined as 4 or more people, more than one a day. It doesn't escape me that most of the 11 victims and 9 others shot were from China, a country 5 times the size of America, and since 2018, they have not had a single mass shooting, not one. America has more than one a day, and they were mostly Chinese seniors looking for a better life in America. They didn't find it because of weapons of war. Now, many radical evangelicals and right-wing NRA nuts are going to scream, China is an authoritarian country. Okay. But my exact same statement could be made about Japan, most of Western Europe, Australia, and most of South America. There are virtually none. Mass shooting murder is an American thing. We are unique in the entire world. So why do I say all of this? Well, there's only one purpose. To tell the AAPI community, the LGBTQ plus community understands what happened on Chinese New Year. We remember Orlando's Pulse nightclub. I am a victim of mass gun violence and say his name, Eddie Sotomayor. We remember Colorado's Club Q. And to the AAPI community, we just say we mourn for you and with you because we understand what gun violence does to a marginalized community. Healing's going to take time, but we remember the AAPI community and those lost to senseless and preventable mass gun violence. Eddie Sotomayor.
Well said. I think we're at a point, or at least I feel like I'm at a point where I just have to throw my hands up and say, we have to accept that this is who we are now.
This is who we are. It's America.
And that's where the dangerous part is, because now, through, and we've been warned, we're all a little bit older here, so we've seen it, and as it's evolved and developed, and the reality of it is violence has been force-fed to us over the years until it's now becoming where someone like you, who's an intelligent man, who understands an English professor, who now says, I just throw my hands up. And so imagine if, when it's frustrating, and it's so sad. And then we think about why mental health is on the rise, and the state of our mental health in this country and in the world. I mean, it's a sad day in the world when violence is the norm.
It absolutely is a sad day, especially on a day that is a holiday, that's a celebration. And
start your year.
Yeah, it's the start of the year. Lots of well wishes and promises for what will be a positive outcome in the year. While mass shootings have become, ubiquitous in the U.S., I take really special pause and really special sort of pain whenever they are targeting specific groups of people, Chinese individuals, Black people in a church, Latinos in a Walmart, gay people at a nightclub, right? These are hate crimes. These are deliberate attacks on communities of people, right? So we have lots of mass shootings in this country, and unfortunately, yes, they are becoming very commonplace, but I take that special pause whenever they are so targeted.
I also want to make the note, somebody might split a hair on what you just said and said, well, Club Q might be gay people, violence on gay people. In this instance, it's a Chinese American on Chinese Americans. That's still a hate crime. It is designed to kill a specific community. It's not going to a mall and shooting up a mall. It's not, so it's still a hate crime.
Yep.
Well, and shooting up schools too. I mean, children, defenseless children and teachers. I mean, it's that lovely Second Amendment that will never, ever see the end of.
Josie, a unique opportunity with you sitting here tonight.
As
You
the
qualify in
American,
this,
the Asian American at the table.
You have the representation of this community. When you heard the news about this is so surprising because this is highly unusual. Even with the epidemic of gun mass shooting we have in America, this is a unique one. What was your reaction when you heard?
I mean, you know, in California, there's been a full-on attack on the Asian community. And when I first heard it, I thought it might have been like some extreme radical, you know, and again, that's always sad. And then it's like the black on black crimes. And when it's an Asian on Asian crime, it's like, I really want to know what's going on. And it's just a sad day. And, you know, I'm Filipino, right? And so if you ask most people somewhere in the Midwest, I must be Chinese, right? You know, my whole life I was Chinese or Japanese, and no one really understood the distinction of all the Asian Americans who actually inhabit this country.
Which is part of the problem.
Yeah. We're all Chinese. And, I'm actually Filipino, but I know that as an Asian American, you know, that's the thing about Asians. Like, we have to really come together and support each other and not have any kind of judgment around or discrimination towards each other, and we have to work on that. And I know that as an Asian community, everyone is just trying to strengthen all the time. This is just, again, sad day. A really sad day.
You know, already in the reporting, Fox News has made the note about Chinese American aimed at Chinese American. And I think the person that said that at Fox News, I'm not even going to give her the dignity of repeating her name on that association. I think that they totally missed the point. Because in Japan, if you're Japanese in Japan, and you commit a mass gun attack on other Japanese, it's on the same community. But it doesn't happen. In China, it doesn't happen. The issue is even not in this situation that it is a Chinese American, an elderly in his 70s, he was 72, I believe, attack on Chinese New Year's. That's not the relevant issue. The relevant issue is his access to the guns that made this kind of crime possible that doesn't exist in Japan or China or most of Western Europe or Australia or the United Kingdom or most of South America. That's the issue. And if we allow anyone to change the subject from what the issue is, we're disrespecting those people that are killed and are affected by gun violence, which is why you get no thoughts and prayers from me. That does nothing. We remember that community. Next, we queer up health. Groundbreaking study shows differences from pandemic for LGBTQ+ versus the straight community. We knew this was coming. A new study by the Williams Institute by UCLA finds older LGBTQ+ Americans were affected more negatively by the COVID-19 pandemic than their straight peers. Using data from the U.S. Census Household Pulse Survey, the report examined the demographics, health, and economic experiences of LGBTQ+ adults aged 50 to 64 and those aged 65 and older during the COVID-19 pandemic. That survey data included questions about sexual orientation and gender identity for the first time, granting researchers an unprecedented trove of information about LGBTQ+ Americans. The survey considered different ethnic groups relying on credit cards or loans or savings or retirement to supplement their incomes during the pandemic. More white LGBTQ+ people reported using the same income sources they used before the pandemic to meet their spending needs. More Black, Hispanic, and multiracial LGBTQ+ people reported relying on borrowed money from friends and family, and more Hispanic, Asian, and multiracial LGBTQ+ people reported depending on stimulus payments compared to white LGBTQ+ people. The survey also compares the percentage of straight and LGBTQ+ adults 50 and older who received a COVID-19 vaccine. In both age cohorts, almost all LGBTQ plus people had received the COVID-19 vaccine, more than their straight peers. But among those who tested positive or had been diagnosed with COVID-19, the proportions were similar. Well, interesting, quick summary of the report, which I think is a common sense result that we suspected. We spent the better part of 2 years at Queer News Tonight reporting on COVID every single night. We had an anchor that died of COVID. We say his name, Ron Bernensky. Josie really made headlines because she was one of the first people that we knew that got COVID-19 and was continued to test positive for like 40 some days.
65 plus
65 plus days continued to test positive in the very early. We're talking about April, I believe, March, April of 2020. What we learned from this is if you were white LGBT, you did okay in COVID when everything came to a stop compared to our peers in LGBT of Black, Hispanic, and other communities besides white. And that in general, LGBT had much more difficult time than our straight counterparts, even in white, and had to use more resources of savings, other kinds of revenue generation, family support, and stimulus money than straight counterparts. Those are the two big issues that the Williams Institute finds. And then the other thing, which we also knew, is LGBT had no issue with science. We believe science. And so therefore we got the COVID-19 vaccine far dramatic. Some estimates early on in vaccination was approximately 20 points more than our straight peers. That's
do you think that the response to the vaccine is possibly related to the community's history of HIV and what we've learned from that, what we saw? I mean, if there had been an HIV vaccine early on, obviously people would have gone for that. But I mean, do you think that has anything to do with why?
It's a logical conclusion. The Williams study doesn't come to that conclusion, doesn't comment on that, but that's a logical assumption.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of different factors that play into this study, and again, it's not sharing how they got to their, how they received or accumulated that data, but there's a lot of factors, I mean, is it a surprise to us that the brown communities, when trouble is present, when something like this, there's a breakdown in even our governmental structure, that
our entire society, that brown and Black people are going to be the first ones to feel it, right. And we know that it's an ongoing conversation. I think we're moving in the right direction, but. That's, again, another example. And when we think about how, again, our community, brown and Black, are resourceful people. So it's like throw a pandemic at us. We'll work it out. We're going to figure it out. We'll see you on the other side. Yeah. Enjoy your comfort, And also when you think about it too, in white families, I don't know who exactly they were interviewing, but that could be like a 2-parent unit, a 2-person household, and a lot of the LGBTQ is single, and probably went single through this process. And a matter of fact, I think I adopted a lot of my single friends during the pandemic. So if I remember correctly. I was just thinking in this story, remembering coming to your house every day for weeks and weeks, because completely confined, living with Marcy, your wife, and your mother, and being completely isolated, and we're bringing you desserts, a plate of pastries every day. It was an incredible time. And I remind you, we're going to start to see the pictures of this. This is going to be the first year where we really are in while COVID exists, a relatively COVID-free society. But we're going to start to see all of our pictures because next month is when it really hits us of COVID. 3 years ago, February of 2020. I was just saying to somebody today when this story came up, and I said, oh, we're going to do this story about how LGBT was affected by COVID. And they reminded me, well, it affected everybody the same, because do you remember commercial or US 1 when there were no cars on it at 2 o'clock in the afternoon?
Yeah.
We have been through a
town.
crisis. We really have been through a crisis.
And it's a different world.
And it's a different
We live
world.
today in a very different world.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, next we're going to queer up religion. Church of England apologizes to LGBTQ+ for institutional rejection and hostility.
In an open letter, we together apologise for the pain, hostility, exclusion and rejection that LGBTQI people have experienced within the Church. We realise that this behaviour has not reflected the universal love of God for all people. We know that we need to change. Until now, same-sex couples have had no way of publicly expressing their desire to put God at the centre of their relationship and commitment to one another in a Church of England church. And we have begun to produce a suite of prayers. These prayers are known as prayers of love and faith. They mean that same-sex couples who are faithful and seek a lifelong relationship will be able to come into churches in the Church of England for prayers of dedication, thanksgiving, and of God's blessing.
This is an enormously important point, not only within the Anglican Communion and the Church of England, but also across the global church, in which we seek to recognise and to celebrate the love that all people have for one another, regardless of who they are and where they're from.
Church of England bishops apologized to LGBTQ+ people on Friday, January 20th, for the rejection and hostility they faced, with Archbishop of Canterbury Justin Welby acknowledging that the religious body was still very divided on the subject. The apology comes days after the Church of England set out proposals developed by the bishops that showed it would refuse to allow same-sex couples to get married in its churches, but said priests could bless them in a church. In an open letter, the bishops apologized for not loving the LGBTQ+ community the way God does. The letter also affirmed that the Church of England welcomes the LGBTQ+ community with open arms, as we are all children of God. A spokesperson for LGBTQ+ rights charity Stonewall said the Church of England had once again fallen short of being inclusive and supportive of the LGBTQ+ Christians. This apology has come when many queer lives have suffered and a lot faced discrimination and hostility. The most high-profile support from a religious leader for same-sex couples to get married in churches has come from the Bishop of Oxford, Stephen Croft, who apologized in November for having been slow to change his views. Stay tuned at the end of the show to see a special statement from Sunshine Cathedral's Reverend Dr. Darrell Watkins about this news. So I was surprised at this story because I tend to think of the Church of England as being a bit more progressive. And I was a little shocked that this is their first kind of coming around to this.
Yeah, I'm getting a lot of smoke and mirrors from this statement. You know, that apology is like, oh, sorry, we're divided, and hey, listen, we'll bless you, but you can't get married here, and come to church. And well, I don't know. That message didn't really sound like an invitation to me. So I'd like to believe that there's a sincere, you know.
Josie, they're British. You're not going to get anything
Hey, listen,
like that.
I just went to London a couple months ago. I love it. I love it there. But no, seriously, I mean, it's like, are you serious about about progress? Are you serious about acceptance? And I'm honestly, I'm tired. I'm exhausted by the tolerance conversation. I don't want anyone to tolerate us. I want us to be accepted. And in order for us to be accepted, I understand that my responsibility is to accept them. And so in this space that it is, I'd rather you hold your lip. I don't need your insincere apologies. Work it out and come back to us.
So you're agreeing with Stonewall's observation that it's not very much.
Yeah, it's
Orlando, I'm curious, you're the executive director of SAVE, political advocacy. You hear these kind of speeches in a different ear and precision than the general public. What is your thoughts?
So, the thoughts and the commentary that I'm going to make is going to cover some of the other stories that we will hear later tonight. And I say this often, and that is that the next 10 years of the LGBT movement will be covered by themes of religion and the trans community. Those two issues, right? Sometimes in parallel, sometimes at cross sections together, those are the two that we will grapple with over the next 10 years. Where we are at peace with the ending the weaponization of religion and the end of religion being used for discrimination and the end of religion sort of being this barrier for us to make any progress. That is the next 10 years. And in many ways, we are often painted in the media and in many other spaces as being people that are not religious, as though we are godless, but many people from our community are, and we need to be more open and out about that so that we can continue to tell our story in those spaces, in those church halls, in those spaces where they believe that we do not exist. And so we need to continue to be humanized. So it's the next 10 years, I think, of what's going to define the movement.
And what do you think about what the Church of England has done on Friday?
I'm with Josie, it's not enough. And so when I'm telling you that we've got 10 years to work it out, it's to go from not enough to getting past the finish line.
Yeah.
Any word from the Southern Baptists on this?
I'm a Southern Baptist, by the way.
Hello?
It's really interesting. In the second week in February, we're going to launch a new show with Hotspots and Happening Out Television Network, and it's a religious show. And we're going to launch a show. Of course, the backbone is Sunshine Cathedral, but it's going to be a religious news, information, and focused conversation in LGBT on faith. Because here are the facts: there's a 75-25 rule in LGBT. 75% of LGBT in America identify as having faith. Shocking number. 75% of us say that we have some kind of religious faith, and however you would define it. Less than 25%, but generally a rule of thumb number, 25, express that faith in some organized way in a church. And so it's interesting in that a very significant number of LGBT, and just exactly as Orlando has said, identify as a person of faith, but only a quarter of us express it in some way, like going to the Church of England, or going to a Methodist church, or a Lutheran church, or a Unity on the Bay, or Sunshine Cathedral. And what's really interesting to me about that is exactly, I think, what Orlando has just identified. The big issue is we're all hurt. The church community, the organized church community, has demonized us. We grew up being demonized. We got that Bible thumping, here's what the Bible says about you, even though it's misinterpreted. And as a result, that rejection has kept us out of organized fashion in religion. And probably one of the reasons why we don't even give the Archbishop of Canterbury the buy-in of going, okay, that's a good step. What's next? And that's what I hear you say. The one thing that I will partially say is encouraging here. The Archbishop of Canterbury is arguably not in the same volume as the Pope, but in terms of the world of the Church of England and for the United Kingdom, is in the same value as the Pope. Right. The Archbishop of Canterbury is the Pope for the royal family and for the predominant religion in the United Kingdom, which has gigantic effects all over the world. And so if the Archbishop is saying, we apologize because the royal ears are listening to that. And I think that is valuable for LGBT, especially in the United Kingdom. So I agree with you in terms of it's not enough, but it is something. It's not nothing. And we need to talk about it 1,000 more times.
Well, and I think it's important to say this out loud based on what you just said. And it's hard for our movement to ever digest this. And that is that our success is made incremental. And so again, when I say 10 years, is that we're going to make sort of, baby steps along the way, and that it's going to get there eventually. And the reason why I say it's important to sort of think about incrementalism is because oftentimes our community will not accept incrementalism. They want it all right now.
We want it right now.
And I get it. I get the frustration of why we want it all. And right now it's because we've suffered for a long time. And we want the end of discrimination to come quickly. But change happens incrementally.
And to that point, just one last thought. One of the reasons I'm excited about this new religious show that will start in February, we have to be able to discuss that there's differences in the Archbishop of Canterbury, who you just heard, and Jerry Falwell. There are differences. Everyone can't be lumped into the same bucket and say, throw them all out, because the incrementalism is, if we're going to get to where we want, we can't have universal rejection, which is what Liberty University is. It's a universal and unconditional rejection. And we don't want to be them. We want to be able to say, let's move forward, let's move forward, let's move forward, even though it's really, really hard. The show will be exciting to explore that.
Yeah. Well, I'll be happy in my 25% of the community representing over here. And we will queer up trans rights. Remember when the YMCA hated the Village People song about gay men? Now trans is an entire new battle.
As I was showering after my workout, I saw a naked male in the women's locker room. I immediately went back into the shower, terrified, and hid behind their flimsy excuse for a curtain until he was gone.
Phillips said that YMCA management later told her that person was transgender and allowed to use the women's locker room, and that Phillips was not in any danger. Under state law, people must be allowed to use facilities such as restrooms or changing areas that align with their gender identity.
The fact that we are now tailoring our privacy policies and bathroom laws around transgenders, ignoring the blatant threat to safety that this poses, is obscene.
Hundreds came out in support of Phillips Wednesday night.
If it happened to my granddaughter, I would be upset, for sure. Children and women have rights to privacy. We shouldn't be invaded when we're in the bathroom or the locker room or God help us, the shower. It's wrong.
The San Diego suburb of Santee became the latest flashpoint in a nationwide debate over transgender rights, an issue that is now the central rallying cry for far-right extremists across the country. Meanwhile, the FBI warns white supremacists are increasingly targeting the nation's power grid, and an attorney for the Proud Boys says former President Donald Trump should be blamed for the January 6th insurrection. Last week, a 17-year-old made a speech to the city council of the San Diego suburb of Santee, claiming she had seen a transgender woman in the locker room of the local YMCA and had hidden in a shower in fright. Footage of that speech soon went viral. Far right-wing media coverage erupted, and Tucker Carlson weighed in. A resulting rally at the YMCA on Wednesday saw local politicians denouncing trans rights, while local white supremacist thugs clashed with anti-fascists nearby. The anti-trans movement has become the central focus of the extremist far right over the last 12 months. All ages drag shows in particular have been a magnet for anti-trans activism and far-right extremist activity. But controversies like the one in Santee have also attracted extremists. Wow. Okay. So this is a hard place to start. And when we're constantly in this conversation, this is the new conversation for our LGBTQ plus, right? Agenda, as we always like to say, or like they like to say. But what's going on here It's a blind, ignorant attack on another human being. When they're talking about all children and women deserve privacy. Yes, everyone deserves privacy. When they said we're being attacked, it's like that language they're using is, I'm attacked, I'm fearing for my life. Who is attacking you? There's a conversation, I do believe, as a woman, to have about transgender and, in not just bathrooms, but like a YMCA where there are showers and, if you're not fully transitioned and what that might bring up for a woman, you don't know, maybe a woman in that YMCA locker room was attacked as was abused, and that's a trigger. That's something also. So there's two sides to this conversation, but what's happening is it's just being pushed by the media and the ignorance, and this is being echoed, and everyone, it's like a torch. They're passing it on, this little flame of ignorance, boom, 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 everywhere. And this conversation is deeper than just this surface level story.
Well, you said language. It's the gaslighting. Al always uses the word gaslighting. It's exactly what's happening. It's all gaslighting. And it's really sad to think that the Y has now become the Young Men's Christian Nationalist Association, if they're out there picketing.
I had finally, in the 70s and 80s, the Village People's call to action. I saw the Village People 3 or 4 times, and they would sing this song, and finally I get the YMCA out of my head, and this brings it right back.
I really appreciate one of the comments that Josie was making, and that is that there was a sentiment I think that they were making about sort of bringing down the temperature of the conversation in order to be able to have an educational exchange. And the woman who was frightened, right? She went so far as to, testify in front of the dais of the city in which she lives in. And that's big, right? Like that's really sort of putting it on a really big loudspeaker. And I think that there's a difference between that versus her engaging with the YWCA privately and saying, this is what I've experienced. I didn't feel comfortable with that. I know that you have this policy where you're allowing this individual, for this, but sort of like there's work to be done at that level before it's sort of like at the dais in front of a city commission. And the reason why I say this is because that dais in front of the city commission is video recorded. It's then projected out to millions of audiences. And then now we're going to see copycat performances of what she did in many other cities of people saying, this is what happened in this restroom, right? And so all of this sort of has legs, if you will, right? It's going to sort of have all of these, it's going to be replicated several times because we've heard the argument about the bathroom since we've been discriminated against, right? It's always been there, but there's always these insightful messages of the fright, the predatory nature, etc. But we know that more straight people, right, are the pedophilias, the people who are causing the assaults and the kind of crime that we should really be afraid of. And so we know the difference between the reality as a community, but we know that the general community does not know the distinction quite yet.
Yeah, and it's interesting to me, multiple observations in terms of bringing the temperature down in the conversation. That can't happen. And the reason is they don't want that to happen. In the 1970s, Anita Bryant told and taught us one thing. Villainize a community because it is valuable for fame, power, and money. And that's what Anita Bryant did until she got the pie in the face and lost it all. The situation here is, it's very interesting about Tucker Carlson's comments. Tucker Carlson's interest is not to bring the temperature of the conversation down, because that's not good for him. Right. He is stirring and stirring and stirring, just like Laura is and like Sean is. Don't even get us started on Newsmax. They are doing this because it is good for them. They want a Republican president to come to power. They'll want perhaps a Donald Trump, but definitely a Ron DeSantis to come to power, because that would be good for Tucker Carlson, which is what they got in the 4 years of Donald Trump being president. So as a result, he's going to gaslight. Whether he cares one iota about any of this, it's in his interest to beat the drum on the culture war. And we should recognize that right from the get-go. His interest is to cause that, and everything he can do to contribute to that will do it. He will continue to do it. A good example, last week we had conversation about the very interesting move, and in fact you participated in it with your champagne glass of the M&Ms and the special packaging that they were doing to embrace women and lesbian women and the broad definition of women, which also includes trans women, and that process. Tucker Carlson exploded. He absolutely exploded. What did Mars announce today? They're going to remove the packaging. They are going to surrender to the gaslighting attack at M&Ms. Now, disappointing because you would think that Mars would be able to stand up to that. That's a different argument and a different conversation. But the fact remains, Tucker Carlson's voice of culture war is powerful. The gaslighting is powerful. Orlando has to stand up to this kind of political advocacy against it every single day. And we have to recognize this is going to go on and it's going to get worse. And we have to decide how we're going to stand up and face it. Otherwise, we're going to see 17-year-olds all over the country villainize and villainize and villainize our community.
Well said. So now we're up South Florida and Florida. Orlando's Southern Nights LGBTQ plus bar has window-shattering attack. As Swamp King Ron DeSantis leads the Florida legislature further and further into abject queer phobia and real-world effects are being made apparent, this week one of Orlando's premier LGBTQ plus spaces was attacked and vandalized in the dead of the night. The Southern Nights complex, comprised of Southern Nights, Southern Craft, and District Dive, had its windows shattered in the middle of the night on Wednesday, with some seemingly left with bullet holes in them. Though the CCTV camera quality doesn't seem clear enough to identify a suspect, the Orlando Police Department is currently investigating. Florida Representative Ana Escamani spoke about the event, calling it a hate crime and sharing photos of the other shattered windows. The bar requests, quote, "If anyone has any information, please contact the Orlando Police Department immediately," end quote. Despite the attack, the brave owners and patrons resumed normal operations by Thursday. Events like their college night, a drag race party, and their weekly Girl the Party night are moving forward in the face of this pathetic attempt at intimidation. Based in the city that faced one of the biggest LGBTQ plus tragedies in this nation's history, the bar offers one direction to its community. Please stay safe.
Are now investigating.
Your first initial thought is that you are a target for a specific reason. I don't want to assume, but I can tell you that my heart feels attacked, for sure.
I spoke with Blue Star, a spokesperson for Southern Nights and an advocate for Orlando's LGBTQIA community.
It's heartbreaking. It's just heartbreaking. I mean, every day we stand up and we fight for our rights. Unfortunately, in Florida, we are battling the Don't Say Gay laws, our anti-trans laws, and every single day you're beat down when you wake up. And to have someone attack one of our safe spaces in Orlando is disheartening.
Orlando Commissioner Patty Sheehan showed her support just hours later.
I mean, I hate it because there's been so much backlash against the LGBTQ community lately. I'm hoping this is not related to that kind of rhetoric that spreads hatred towards my community.
I certainly have a large degree of appreciation for the resilience and the idea that, business shall go on. But I have to say that, I know that these people make a decision to continue to sort of be the strength of the community, open business, try to maintain much normalcy as possible. But they do this knowing that in the back of their mind, there's a little bit of fear that there might be the perpetrator returning, that there might be more violence lurking around the corner. And so hats off to the courage and the bravery that it takes to do this in order to really be able to maintain some sense of normalcy, some sense of let's just really be as resilient as possible.
We have to take our safety more seriously these days. I mean, that's what's happening. With the shootings, with the nightclub issues. We just, in the back of our minds, we have to be aware.
I think one step further than just being aware is being present. Right? Is being present to our surroundings at all time. Because again, we can go on the offensive. And when we go out, we're consciously going out to keep that feeling of normalcy. We're not under attack and we're bold, we're a brave community. And when we go out there, we also get to be present so that we're looking and we're having each other's backs. And then I hope that these situations, these incidences that are happening, these expressions of hate towards our community, that they're going to be met with courage, they're going to be met with bravery, and that it's going to bring our community closer together, because through this process, we're going to have each other's backs.
And we saw how Orlando came together after Pulse, how the whole community came together across the country. And I don't know, it's really frightening. I mean, as somebody who's been out and about for a very long time, from the beginning or the early days of just simple gay bashing on the street, now to our spaces being attacked. I have to say it's really horrifying, and DeSantis's minions are truly despicable.
Minions. It's interesting. I went to the University of Central Florida in Orlando. I spent so much time in this bar and in Pulse and the Parliament House. Pulse and Southern Nights are less than 2 miles apart. This is not funny in any possible way, because for somebody to commit this kind of vandalism within 2 miles of what is ultimately and eventually going to be a national monument is an indication of how insidious this kind of attack is. That first thing. Then second, there are only two, in my opinion, there are only two options of action response here. One of which is to live in fear and go, I'm not going to go back to Southern Nights. I'm not going to go to X. I'm not going to go to Y, because if I participate in any organized fashion in what we call safe spaces for our community, I potentially put myself at risk. That's a choice that you could make. I hope that we don't make that choice, because I think we all generally agree that if we don't stand up to people that are demonizing us and are categorizing us in the way that they are doing, starting at the governor's mansion in Florida, and it trickles right down to the Proud Boys and, frankly, Moms for Liberty. I don't see any difference in the Proud Boys and Moms for Liberty. Their goal is the same: to push us into closet, to go, okay, we might let you live, but we don't want you to acknowledge or tell anybody who you are. You don't get that. You just don't get that from us. And so when you smash our windows at a bar in Orlando at Southern Nights, you're telling us, go back into the closet. You might be able to live. We might accept you, but we don't want to acknowledge your existence. You don't get that. And so our choices are to acquiesce to that and live in fear, or to unite and say, nope, you're not getting that, and we're all working together to stop it. That's what we do to the Proud Boys and Moms for Liberty and Governor Ron DeSantis.
Now we're going to queer up politics. See the interview of drag queen Congressman George Santos say, 2 gay fathers attack the family unit.
Well, look at it this way, John. The family unit's been under attack for decades. Yeah. Look, in different ways, right? In different ways. The flavor of the decade is same-sex couples. Oh, that's so okay. It's look, to each their own. I don't have anything against that, but they're teaching in school kids, that you don't need a mommy and a daddy. You can have two mommies. You can have two daddies. I think that's a little much for kids, right?
It's not their place.
And that's an attack on the family unit in the sense where they're just making excuses and reasoning to explain to kids why there's only one mommy or why there's only daddy, and there's no other person, that it's okay to be like that, that's your unique type family. I want to go back in time and think, why would it be bad for minorities in general? And that includes me, right? But why would it be bad for us to have a mom, a dad in the same household, your little brothers and sisters, And then I keep thinking, because then that creates stability.
Out Representative George Santos is the first LGBTQ plus Republican elected to the U.S. House, but that doesn't mean he has much respect for other LGBTQ plus people. A recently uncovered interview from his previous failed campaign to represent New York's 3rd Congressional District shows him ranting for 2 minutes about how the lack of heterosexual parents is destroying the family unit, parroting debunked talking points that conservatives have been using for decades to attack same-sex couples who adopt and raise children. Santos went so far as to say that children need both a father and a mother, or else they will grow up to be troubled individuals. One of the main reasons conservatives have used to attack same-sex couples' rights to get married, adopt, and even raise their own children. He also said that kids shouldn't hear about LGBTQ plus or single-parent families in schools because that teaches them their families are okay. On John Stubbins' conservative Indivisible show on September 4th, 2020, he said that the family unit has been under attack for decades. Santos's point of view is not supported by evidence. Studies on children raised by same-sex couples have found that they do just as well and sometimes even better on certain measures like academic performance. Santos also made it a point to attack the Respect for Marriage Act last year, even though he wasn't in Congress. Well, and we can see how heterosexual parents did such a fantastic job raising little Georgie Porgy into a fine, upstanding citizen. I mean, he has room to talk. She is such a sick and twisted queen.
How do you really feel?
I think you know.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about the same thing. I have a really fun theory, okay? Now, just follow along with me on this one.
This is going to be
all right, so...
I want my popcorn.
Yeah. I was thinking, I go, God, so here's this guy. I mean, there's a lot, he has a long trail of different other great ideas. Okay, I'll just say all his great ideas over the years. But what if he actually was a Trojan horse that's actually working for the LGBTQ community, went in, infiltrated, showed up, he had to play it. He was like undercover, clearly, become accepted by the Republican, party, the community, and everyone else. And now he just blew it all up because, man, these guys all look like suckers. That conservative guy, Stubbins, and everyone who voted for him, and all of them. So you guys, you got played, okay?
It's a possibility.
It's interesting to me because he's a reflection of where a lot of our politics is going. To your point, this appearance in 2020, he lost that campaign. He won 2022 in a seat that was Biden by +6 in Long Island. So it's not a natural red, crazy Proud Boys radical district. It's not that. What he did was he played everybody. He played through the various lies that he did. The Democrats didn't look into the background. The Republicans didn't look into the background. And you got what you want. And you got what you bought, and now all of this house of cards has come together. So it's interesting to me in terms of what he says. He was just saying what he needed to say for this broadcaster and Newsmax and X and Y to do enough to get through, which is what he did. And what that represents is not only an embracement that lying is okay. For the most part, you're not called out on the limb, because we watched someone become president of the United States and lie in 4 years, by some estimates, more than 10,000 times. And that's what it is. And he's still our president for 41% of Americans after lying 10,000 times. We don't care about this. So therefore, we don't care about what George DeSantis did. The other thing that I think is interesting about him.
Great pun.
Is, thank you.
Great pun.
I wasn't sure if he knew he was doing that.
Thank you. He is a hilarious caricature of other people that are real politicians. He's a hilarious caricature of Lady G in South Carolina, in my opinion. He is a cartoon representation of Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio and our governor in Florida. They just do it a lot better than George DeSantis does. And we're in a situation where we really should pay attention to it. We love the joke. It's not funny, but we do love the silliness of the drag queen from Rio. But it's a representation of something that's going on in America that is far more serious than we represent. And we understand and we're discussing. Because this is where big chunks of America is going. And when that happens, truth no longer matters. The right and wrong no longer matters. Just getting our way is what we want and matter. And so for people like Orlando, who represents us in great ways through SAVE, it's a whole new challenge of going, my goodness, the right is not the right. The truth is not the truth. The reasonableness is not the reasonableness. And as a result, we're going to have to relearn a whole new set of skills of dealing with the kinds of attacks that George DeSantis represents for us. I think it's a very trying time for America.
Indeed. Next, we're going to queer up South Florida and Florida. Our fund honors LGBTQ+ business and community activist Jeff Oliverio. The South Florida LGBTQ Philanthropy Awards by Our Fund Foundation is the annual awards reception that will celebrate outstanding philanthropists who give their time, talent, and treasure to the South Florida LGBTQ+ community. Honorees and guests will enjoy a cocktail reception in the lower courtyard prior to the ceremony in the Mary Porter Riverview Ballroom. This year's awardees include Didier Moritz and Erwin Mayer, who will be rewarded with the Philanthropists of the Year Award. The Commitment to a Cause Award will be given to Nick Harris, who is a queer, gender nonconforming attorney, activist, and speaker, and a co-founder of the signature open mic event, Thou Art Woman. An awardee for the next generation of Philanthropy Award will be Queer News Tonight anchor Jeff Oliverio, who serves as chair for the National LGBTQ Task Force Gala Miami and is a founding member of and treasurer of the Hollywood LGBTQ+ Council. And the Dick Schwartz Award for Lifetime Achievement will be given to Chuck Nichols for his contribution to the community and for serving as president for Tuesday's Angels. The 2023 South Florida LGBTQ Philanthropy Awards will be held on February 18th, 2023 from 5:30 to 8 p.m. at the Broward Center for the Performing Arts. Tickets are available online at ourfund.org/awards. ourfund.org/awards. Well done, Jeff. Yeah, very, very deserving.
This is one of my favorite awards ceremonies because oftentimes the philanthropists are playing a role in the background, sort of funding our ability to have our events, funding our ability to be able to run our nonprofits. And so you sort of don't ever really see these people who are the funders and now we're bringing them to the front to give them their moment in the spotlight.
And it is wonderful to see Jeff being recognized for his many contributions, including this coming weekend, right? The My Hollywood Pride. One of his really great fun moments.
Yeah, and on top of Jeff, and I don't mean it that way. We got to give the shout out to Nick, and wow, what an important voice in our community, and they're just an awesome human being, and we're also lucky if we get the chance to work with them, and they're just brilliant. They're brilliant. So I mean, those two powerhouses right there alone, man, they reflect what's working in our community.
Yeah. When I first heard the news, I wondered, wait, is it Jeff Oliverio getting the award or Jeff Oliverio's hair? They're both characters in our community. A couple of notes that resonate for me. First off, I love the story because it's really a good news story. We tell lots of stories at Queer News Tonight that are reality stories, that they're in the trenches of an Orlando Gonzales story and every single day, and it can be tough in terms of how our community is dealt with, and what are the next right steps. That is not this. This is a good story about what is good about our community and what's good going on in our community. Congratulations, Jeff. What you're my friend, and what I think about you and your contributions to community, and to Nick and others that are recognized in the program. But at the end of the day, I don't want to call out Jeff. Mm-hmm. I want to call out Truist, because Truist Bank, which is who he works for, it's a perfect synergy of what we ask our business community to do: support our mission, support our community. And Truist Bank makes the decision that Jeff Oliverio can be spared to some degree in coordinating the National LGBTQ Task Force dinner to raise almost $1 million. To be able to be on the Hollywood Council and move that city 40 points to an HRC perfect rating of 100. Truist Bank's giving up their Jeff Oliverio turns an entire city in terms of representation of Hollywood, and to be able to put on a pride organization, and not a pride parade where there's half-naked men dancing on floats, which we love that too, but to put on a very family-oriented pride in Hollywood, to say, wait, we're more than just that. Don't stereotype us into a box. We can do this too. Those are all influenced by Jeff Oliverio, which are directly influenced by Truist Bank. So I congratulate, of course, Jeff, but really Truist, because we can hold them up to say, when you commit to good in our community, you really get paid dividends through a Jeff Oliverio. First thought. And then the other thought is our fund. I congratulate our fund. And if you're not aware of the impact that our fund is making in our community, I know Orlando is crystal clear on this fact, but our fund has had a dramatic effect, especially in the last 3 years when pandemic came. We almost lost many of our 501c3s. If our fund didn't step in emergency situations, we would have lost 501c3s. They are involved. It's the third largest, I believe, foundation for LGBT in the United States, and they are dedicating funds in all kinds of different ways to embrace our community. And how do they do that? Here's the thanks to our fund. You can make a legacy gift. Someday, you're not going to be here. And your legacy gift in terms of how you plan what would be the next in community helps fund our community forever. And that's what our fund does. If you're not familiar with it, and you are a person of any age, 30, 50, 70, start to think about how you can help arts and people of color and people that have health needs. And that's what our fund does. political advocacy, all kinds of different ways. Make sure that you look into our fund. And when they elevate attention to the philanthropists that are helping in the community, you help do that and fund our community forever in ways of good. Which brings me right back to my first comments. This is a good story because they're doing good in our community. Look into our fund and make sure you participate in those events in February.
Next, we queer up South Florida and Florida. The Red Dress, Dress Red Gala comes to South Florida. The World AIDS Museum and Educational Center will host South Florida's first Red Dress, Dress Red Gala at 6:30 p.m. on February 4th, 2023. Attendees should expect nothing less than a massive dance party with incredible music by DJ Ed Talks. The VIP attendees will get to experience upscale food provided by famous caterers and my friends, the Two Todds, with beverages provided by Hunter's Nightclub and Tito's, along with live entertainment for Broadway star Ann Steele, Season 10 American Idol contestant Matthew Darren, South Florida legend Lenora J., and the famous Synergy Twins. The RDDR Gala will be hosted by Season 6 and All-Stars RuPaul's Drag Race contestant Trinity K. Bonet. VIP guests will get a chance to meet and greet along with photos with the host. The overall event will also include the live art by Avi Ram, an exhibition fashions by Project Runway designers, and more surprises. This national event is coming to South Florida for the first time, so make the best out of it.
The World AIDS Museum and Hunter's Nightclub proudly present the Red Dress, Dress Red Gala, February 4th at the Design Center of the Americas.
Tickets available at rdgrgala.eventbrite.com. Show up to show off your most lavish red attire.
Next, we are proud of our special partnership with Sunshine Cathedral, the world's largest queer church here in Fort Lauderdale. Supporting that partnership, we are broadcasting from our permanent set here at the Sunshine Cathedral at the Happening Outs television studios. We broadcast Sunshine Cathedral's Sunday International Service at 10:30 a.m. every week.
I'm Glenn Weinzimmer, founder of the Smart Ride, second largest AIDS bicycle ride in the country, and Sunshine Cathedral is my queer church.
Fox News, ever heard of them? Tucker Carlson and radical conservatives have suggested the LGBTQ plus community has a secret plan. We can only guess it is for world domination. We couldn't agree more, and we are going to tell you all about it in our segment called The Gay Agenda.
In The Gay Agenda, we queer up the world view. Surprising results of top 10 countries with the most handsome men in the world begins. Sorry, America, it's not you. Beauty and attractiveness are a desire of all which we can aspire to see in ourselves or others. Every individual in the world possesses unique qualities and characteristics. Men in the world, which are in high demand, possess certain distinguished characteristics such as sharp features, a built body, six-pack abs, perfect hair, golden tans, and very alluring accents. And the country that tops the list of the most handsome men in the world is Italy, for the men with beautiful eyes, strong features, and lovely hair. That is followed by Brazil, Angola, Saudi Arabia, France for lovely dresses, Germany for their features, Australia, the United Kingdom, Sweden for having perfect blondes, and Spain.
In the gay agenda, we queer up entertainment. Another brick in the stone wall as fans attack Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon Rainbow Anniversary. Pink Floyd's The Dark Side of the Moon has sported a rainbow on its cover for 50 years, since the cover depicts a prism refracting light. Still, when the band posted an adapted version of this iconography to its Facebook to celebrate the album's anniversary, many fake fans took the rainbow as a sign of Pink Floyd's support for gay rights, and they weren't happy about it. One user commented, quote, "Lose the rainbow, you're making yourself look stupid," end quote. Such remarks prompted the band's more reasonable fans to fire back. For those who love Pink Floyd, the band will issue a remastered deluxe The Dark Side of the Moon box set on March 24th.
In the gay agenda, we'll queer up religion. With growing trans attacks, Jewish community asks not to forget LGBTQ+ Jewish youth. In the past 2 years, state lawmakers in nearly 36 states across the country have introduced more than 300 bills targeting trans Americans, 86% focusing on trans youth. Ida Klein's article in The Forward says, "Our own democracy is being used to harm the LGBTQ community." Sam, a trans masculine kid from Florida, talked to Klein saying, quote, "It feels bleak right now in Florida." The bleakness to which Sam refers is the Florida Board of Medicine's proposed ban on providing gender-reaffirming medical care to transgender young people. Interacting with other LGBTQ+ Jewish youth, Klein sees three messages consistently. It is hard, they're not giving up, and they're looking to their Jewish communities for support and action.
In the gay agenda, we queer up trans rights. Laverne Cox explains, quote, "Trans people are exhausted," end quote, by anti-trans hate. The Orange is the New Black actress recently went on MSNBC to talk about her long history of trans advocacy, how trans rights and reproductive rights are connected, and why censorship can't stop kids from being trans. At the beginning of Cox's appearance on the news network's Morning Joe, she mentioned that the first protest she had ever been to was in 2001 when Amanda Milan, a 25-year-old trans woman and sex worker, was killed in front of a New York bus terminal by two men. Cox said she and many other trans people are exhausted with the anti-trans rhetoric and discrimination against the community.
In the gay agenda, we queer up lesbian culture. JoJo Siwa says she is proud of anniversary of lesbian 17-year-old JoJo coming out. JoJo Siwa is marking 2 years of embracing her truest self. She shared a throwback photo on Saturday as she celebrated the second anniversary of her coming out. The snapshot featured Siwa wearing a "Best Gay Cousin Ever" t-shirt, which she previously posted to come out as a member of the LGBTQ+ community in a series of posts on TikTok and Instagram back in January of 2021. Shortly after her coming out, the Celebrate artist went public with her girlfriend, Kylie Prue, for their 1-month anniversary. After ending their on and off relationship over the summer, Siwa recently announced her split with Avery Cyrus following 3 months of dating.
In the gay agenda, we queer up drag culture. RuPaul's Drag Race Bob will join Madonna on the historic 2023 concert tour.
You know what? I have one. Madonna.
Yeah?
I dare you
to do a world tour and play your greatest motherfucking hits.
Okay. 4 decades?
Yeah, bitch.
As in 40 years?
Yes.
As in all those songs?
Fuck yeah.
We're talking
We're
like
talking
a virgin.
open
Like a
your heart. We're talking tropical on the island breeze.
yeah. All of nature wild and free. This is where I long to be. La Isla Bonita. Wait, hold up. That's a lot of songs.
It's a lot of songs.
You think people would come to that show?
I'll be there.
Well, I'll be there.
You
Oh,
there?
yeah, I'm there.
There? Okay, so the answer is fuck yeah.
Madonna recently announced a brand new world tour named the Celebration Tour, which will feature all of her biggest hits from 4 decades in the music industry. Joining her on the tour is Bob the Drag Queen, best known for co-hosting HBO's Emmy Award-winning series We're Here and Winning, season 8 of RuPaul's Drag Race. The North American leg of the Celebration Tour will start in Vancouver on July 15th and end in Las Vegas on October 7th. The tour will then have a European leg that kicks off in London on October 14 and it runs through December 1st in Amsterdam.
In the gay agenda, we queer up drag culture. RuPaul's Drag Race All-Star winner Jinx Monsoon makes history again with Broadway debut. Jinx Monsoon recently became the first drag queen to play Mama Morton in Chicago on Broadway. And RuPaul's Drag Race fans are praising the queen for changing history. Jinx won Drag Race Season 5 in 2013 and also won All Stars Season 7, the first season with all former Drag Race winners competing. Broadway has always been a safe space for the queer community, but hasn't always had strong representation on stage. The industry still has a long way to go, but casting the Drag Race contestant in Chicago shows how serious they are about making change. And that is today's news for the LGBTQ+ community on the world's first and only daily LGBTQ+ evening news show.
If our community is important to you, share this news with your friends and family. Are you, like most of America, part of our very large television audience watching this live LGBTQ+ news broadcast right now on Roku, Apple TV, Android TV, or Amazon Fire TV?
Queer News Tonight is the only live LGBTQ+ digital television show in the world that is out of the closet and into the headlines. We need your support. If our community is to grow, we must tell our stories and bring them to the attention of the broader world.
This is the only place in the world that tells these types of LGBTQ+ stories in motion and sound. That is the passion of Hotspots Magazine, Happening Out Television Network, and Queer News Tonight.
I'm your anchor, Al Ferguson, and on behalf of these LGBTQ+ reporters, the anchors of Queer News Tonight, including Chef Josie, Dr. Tai Houser, Orlando Gonzales, and Gregg Shapiro, we will see you daily at 8 p.m. And to our LGBTQ+ world, we wish you good night and invite you to stay tuned for the special video on the Church of England and gay marriage.
According to the BBC News, the head of the Church of England and figurehead of the worldwide Anglican Communion has placed bigoted unity over equality again. The Church of England is proposing a blessing for same-sex couples who are legally married by civic ceremonies. So far, so good. But it isn't calling the blessing a wedding or matrimony or marriage, and it isn't proposing ecclesiastical marriage equality. They're only offering this blessing to those who have already been married by somebody else. They're not going to do the wedding, nor are they calling the blessing a wedding. It's just saying that if gay people have been married at a registry office, the church can bless their relationship without calling the blessing a wedding. That's some fancy footwork right there. Now, and this, of course, if the proposal is even approved at their legislative meeting. I think they suspect that it will be. The Archbishop of Canterbury has said that if the proposal passes, he will not personally offer the blessings because his responsibility is the unity of the church. And his blessing gay couples would be a divisive move. Other bishops have said they understand his position. His is a unique position. They understand it. They support it, but they will offer the blessings. The Archbishop of Canterbury has apologized for the times the church has made LGBTQ people feel unwelcome or rejected, but apparently fails to see the irony that denying marriage equality and refusing to even offer a blessing, if it might offend some homophobes, is still divisive and that it's still not fully welcoming or affirming of LGBTQ people. I understand the desperate need of long-established institutions to both have cake and eat it also. But the people who are being used as the chess pieces to play the game still wind up not being treated properly. So once again, a major church body has told queer people that they must patiently wait for justice. If someone else has already given you legal rights, we'll say a prayer over that. We won't call that prayer a wedding, but you're welcome. And so queer people once again are told that they must wait for full inclusion or for the church's unreserved blessing. And once again, this queer minister, who was in fact confirmed in the Anglican tradition, says that the Church of England's position on queer people is not acceptable. Now, I understand that the global communion is made up from churches in all kinds of cultures and countries. And I realize that a lot of those cultures and countries are very conservative. I also realize that those conservative churches in those places are conservative because of British imperialism, who not only was stealing their resources in the 19th century, but also imposing upon them their 19th century conservative Anglicanism. And so while we're trying to tap around and dance and try to make everyone just not angry enough to leave or fight or whatever, my suggestion would be, instead of pretending you're doing something for gay people that you're not, you apologize for the imperialism that has led to this ugly mess to begin with. Now, that aside, all LGBTQ people deserve equal rights, equal protection, equal opportunity, and equal affirmation and validation in the spiritual community. My clarion call is for us each to say a prayer for Sunshine Cathedral today, because we really are unique in the family of spiritual seekers and practitioners. And so pray for your church today. Say a prayer of thanks for our mission and a prayer of blessing for the work that we do, because our work is so needed. And let us then follow those prayers with action by continuing to support Sunshine Cathedral with time, talent, treasure, and testimony. May God's blessing be upon all LGBTQ people who love and who long for love. Amen.
LGBTQ plus news is vital for our community and for the broader world as a whole. We have enough enemies at Fox News. Tucker, Sean, and Laura are loud. We need passionate allies. Happening Out Television Network, Queer News Tonight, and It's Happening Out are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. Our community needs your support. Like this broadcast and subscribe now to ensure the growth of the entire LGBTQ plus